All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsay, and I'm on staff with Magnified Giving. And today I am here with Patty from Community Matters and Rebecca from Dream Center Cincinnati. And we're going to talk today about poverty as a social cause, which is pretty broad. There are a ton of organizations and missions who address poverty in lots of different ways. So I'm excited for you to hear from two different representatives from organizations today. So Patty, would you kick us off and just share, about your organization and what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lindsay. My name is Patty Lee. I'm the Chief Advancement Officer for Community Matters. I actually started on our programming side 7 years ago. And so I've gotten to see the whole breadth of what we do, how we do it. Community Matters mission is a little different than some other social service organizations. We are very place-based, so we work specifically with neighbors in the Lower Price Hill community of Cincinnati, which is just 5 minutes west of downtown. And we partner with our neighbors to build a more thriving and just community. So, we have some of the basic services that help alleviate poverty, like we do have a food pantry and can provide some other emergency support, but we're also working on co-creating different leadership opportunities and other things with our neighbors. So we've started a community laundromat. We've worked with neighbors to advocate for affordable housing. We have community gardens that we grow together collectively. And so it looks like a whole bunch of different things, but with this neighborhood and with our neighbors every day. So that's just a little bit about kind of our mission and how we do things a little bit differently.
For sure. Thanks, Patty. And Rebecca, could you go ahead and share?
Yep, my name's Rebecca Hill, and I am the Director of Community Outreach and Events at Dream Center Cincinnati. Dream Center Cincinnati is a community outreach center. We're located in Sedamsville, which many people haven't heard of, but we're in the city limits of Cincinnati. We're not very far, just a stone's throw from Price Hill, where Patty is. But on the very western side of the city, right off of Route 50 that goes through Columbia Parkway, that goes through downtown. Our mission is bringing help, hope, and healing to the community, to the Sedamsville, but also to the surrounding area and Cincinnati, of downtown Cincinnati. We do also have a food pantry for those in need. We also do things like serve community meals, free dinners for the community. The area right around us is extremely low income. So we have a lot of families that are in need, and a lot of what we do involves mentorship and character building. We have a program called Man Up Basketball that is for young men in our community who can come, and we have identified a lot of fatherlessness in our community. So that's a way that we're kind of investing. And we also do a lot of fun special events for the community, meet needs that are immediate. But our long-term goal is to invest in individuals and families to bring them through that process of getting immediate help, finding that there's hope to better their situation, and then coming to a place of healing where we can hopefully bring them out of that poverty or that hopeless situation. So that's kind of our overall goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you both for sharing. We'll just kind of jump right into some of the other questions. First of all, I'd love to hear from you both in your, from what you've seen, what impact does this kind of work have on the community? So when you're addressing things like poverty, working together with neighbors and community members to lift other people up, what kind of impact do you see that having on the community?
Well, I guess I'll go first on this one. I think one of our biggest impacts, we've been here 2 years, just over 2 years. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure, we opened on December 1st, 2019. So we had the COVID shutdown in March. So just as we were kind of getting our initial momentum, so things have been looked a lot different than we thought in a lot of areas, like everyone. But one of the biggest impacts we've noticed is we've really partnered with the Sedamsville Community Association Civic Association, which was almost defunct at the time. But we had a few business leaders and community leaders who were still wanting to stick around. We've let them, partnered with them. They come to our building and have offices here they use for free. And we have seen a dramatic decrease in crime since we really started investing in the community. Our neighborhood officer, who we call him Officer Wiz because his last name is Wizarkowski. But
he's also our neighborhood officer,
yeah.
because we're neighbors, and
Right.
so we love Officer Wiz too.
Right. So he brings a report every month to our meetings, and he's just been shocked month after month since we opened of seeing that crime rate go down. So I think that's one thing that's been very positive and something measurable, is bringing the community together, bringing that hope to the community, and people seeing there can be change. There are resources. It seems like that both the drug use in our community overall and those drug arrests, and then the overall crime has really dropped. So that's one positive thing.
That's really great. I enjoy this so much, being on this call with Rebecca, because we are neighbors, and it's
Right.
exciting to hear about what's happening in Sedamsville as well. So thanks for sharing that. I think for us, we're a relatively young organization. We've been working in Lower Price Hill for 7 years, but because we're viewing our neighbors for their strengths and what skills and resources they have to offer in solving this really complex, systemic issue that poverty is, we're just seeing like this incredible energy and power and momentum that's coming from our neighbors, where instead of like us as the organization holding that power and being the one that comes in and provides services, it's really our neighbors that are driving the change that's happening. And so, I think it's more empowering. It's more positive to see as far as the long-term sustainability of the community overall, when it's neighbors' voice and neighbors' energy that's kind of leading the way. In particular, a neighborhood like Lower Price Hill that's been experiencing pretty intense poverty for a long time now. There have been a lot of organizations that have come in, seeing the needs, or having funding, to support those needs. And then the funding changes or the interests change and those organizations leave. And so our neighbors really wanted a partner to be committed long-term and to help them see that vision. So we are seeing the positive impact in just 7 years of that commitment of working alongside our neighbors.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that's so important to, view the community you're serving, like for the strengths and the assets that they bring, and not just bulldozing in and trying to fix things. I think that's really important and really beautiful. So I don't want to linger on this too long, but I would love to hear from both of you. What are some of the challenges that you're facing in the work that you're doing kind of at this time?
I can go ahead and start with that one because it's so fresh, I think, in all of our minds right now. Lower Price Hill neighbors have some barriers to technology, right? And, so our work, really engaging on a daily basis with our neighbors is very face-to-face. It's walking around the neighborhood, it's talking to people, it's having community outreach events, it's having meetings, it's doing all of those things that are in person. We're now in year 2 of this pandemic, and it's really hard to maintain those connections when you can't always be together. And so we've had these little ebbs and flows. Like during the summer, we were able last year to shift all of our meetings into our community gardens where we could be outside and distanced. We've had just glimmers of being able to be back together, but it's definitely the biggest challenge to our work right now, is not being able to all be together in that way.
I agree with that completely, because I can't tell you the amount of time that I and our volunteers have spent when we've had something or had resources to give out, or we just recently did a training on how to help someone with addiction, what you can do initially, because we have a lot of addiction in our community. And we have a 500 seat sanctuary because this building was originally a church. But so we can socially distance and do those kind of trainings, but to just let people know we're having it is just literally a lot of printing flyers and going door to door type of things, just to even let people know about events. And we've experienced that. And I think as a community outreach center, of course, finance and resources, those are always issues. You always want to give more than you have to give. And you always want to have the money to do more and invest more. So always that's a thing. If people have called me and said, hey, how can we help? One of our recent projects is we've been partnering with Riverside Academy. We found out that they have not really had a working library for about 4 years. Their library was being used as mostly a storage room, and they have no librarian. So that is the closest school to our property. It's literally like under a half mile, just straight down River Road. So over the summer, we've been working with just gutting that storage area library and putting books in it and stuff. But it's been a massive project and very expensive. But in the meantime, we got a little library in front of our building, and we kind of are stocking that for the neighborhood kids and working on that. But just like projects like that, like I wish I had $10,000 to just resource their library, things like that. So I think finance and resource are always an issue, but right now we're in the same situation as Patty. People, it has to be face-to-face most of the time. And so that takes volunteers and that takes time. So.
Yeah, we've been trying to open a new community arts center for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's just, between construction delays and, the ability to be in a small enclosed space together,
Right.
it has been a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So you both alluded to this a little bit, but I'm wondering, how are your organizations collaborating with your community members, with other organizations, or just other entities and organizations in the community? What kind of collaboration efforts are you seeing? And how does that impact the work that you do and even the two of you?
Yeah, I'll say organizationally, there are several other large institutions in Lower Price Hill, Oyler School, the Community Learning Center Institute, Santa Maria Community Services. There are several others. There was at one point where, we didn't always communicate very well across the different organizations, but there has been a lot of intentional focus in the last couple of years for our organizations to all, just really work more collaboratively, because that's what's in the best interest of the community. And so we actually meet monthly to share, what everyone's doing, to share best practices, to lean on each other when we need to do so. And that has been tremendously helpful, and I think I've talked a lot about already, but we really are every day partnering with our neighbors on what's next. It means that our work is a little, hard to pinpoint programmatically sometimes. There's always new stuff. But our neighbors have done tremendous things in partnership. We opened a community laundromat. We are working on affordable housing right now. And so all of those things, wouldn't be possible without the energy of our neighbors. Our neighbors actually have a coalition now, like membership group called the Neighborhood Action Team. And so that's like them working collaboratively together and then partnering and advising us on our work as well.
Yeah, we have the same as Patty. We just have a lot of groups, and being so young, only being 2 years old, we're still working on some of those partnerships. But working with like people working cooperatively, and with Matthew 25 Ministries, we partner with them a lot. So, and then of course our community association, our local schools, just trying to, we have a lot of outside groups we work in as far as getting people Heritage House and getting people into addiction recovery, into housing, into immediate programs. We have a couple ministries we work with and outreach centers we work with that will take people, women and children who are involved in abusive situations. So those resources, our community is very aware that if they have an issue like that, if they have an immediate need to get into an addiction recovery, or their loved one does, or someone has immediate need for food or resources, or someone needs to get out of an abusive situation, we pretty much have made a name in the community that this is where you come. So, we're continuing to work on those partnerships. So we feel like our strength is providing the resources we can, but also creating a network where we can offer other resources and partner with other groups and other organizations, so that we can kind of be a one-stop place for our community. If you need help, you can come here to get it. We can walk with you through the process of getting to where you need to be to get that immediate help. So that's really our first step of the mission statement. And we're working on covering all those bases, where if there was anything you needed, we would be here to help you get it. So
we love that model, Rebecca. I think we always say, like, no one can do everything.
Right.
No one can be the expert in everything, especially because poverty is such a complex system.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if we can be the hub of the relationship, like that trust that it takes, being committed long-term to a community and working together, we can be that, broker of resources beyond, what we have to offer. And we've seen the benefit of that with citywide organizations that might have some funding or some expertise where it would benefit the neighborhood, but they're like, we don't know people in the neighborhood.
Right.
You all know people in the neighborhood.
Right.
How do we best connect? And we really appreciate when other organizations are asking, like, how do we best connect? And then we can say, okay, let's talk to some neighbors. Let's get together and see what people think is the best to benefit the community. And so, yeah, it's cool to be in that, having the relationships first.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Could both of you maybe just share briefly, like, how did you come to be part of this work? What is it that compelled you to, enter a career in the nonprofit sector, and maybe specifically, in the cause that you are championing and in your communities?
Rebecca, you want to take that one?
Mine is kind of a rough story. I'll try not to cry when I tell it. I was involved in ministry as a pastor's wife, as a worship leader growing up in my church. Always taught Sunday school. Grew up on the east side of Cincinnati, very upper middle class family. And I think however you grow up, you tend to think that your experience is normal, right? You tend to think that your life experience is like the average life experience. So for me, I never really thought about poverty or abuse or those kind of situations. I had a very easy childhood, and I found myself in a situation where I was thrust into working in an inner city church in Newport, Kentucky, Newport, Covington area. And I found myself doing all the things that I didn't have to interact with people, cooking the food, staying in the kitchen, serving meals, really not interacting, because I felt I didn't have anything to say. I kind of felt that my experience was so different that I was nervous, and I'm very shy by nature when I first get to meet people. So one day I was out on the street corner, it was snowing, and I met a young lady who actually asked me for money for an abortion. She was very pregnant, and I invited her in for a meal. And during the meal, I sat down and talked with her, and I heard her story, which was just heartbreaking. And I guess I looked at her that day and I realized that if I was born to her mother, I'd probably be her. And it just showed me a different side of people. And it really, that day changed my life, changed the whole focus of my life. I was 31 years old, and really gave me a compassion and a passion to help people. And to, you know, this girl had been through a situation where her father was an alcoholic. Her mother, they got divorced, he left. A new guy came in with a son much older than her. Her mother got cancer and was hospitalized. And while she was in the hospital and actually died in the hospital, her stepfather and stepbrother sexually abused her. And she left home at 13 and had been on the streets ever since, you know, started doing drugs to dull the pain of what had happened to her, started prostituting herself to pay for the harder and harder drugs, and had already had one child, and had that child taken away. And her story was just life-changing for me. It really was. You know, nobody goes out and, you know, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I know what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a meth addict. I'm going to be an alcoholic. You know, I'm going to be an abusive father. Nobody starts out that way. They get there because of choices that they've made and or things that have happened to them, or the situation that they've been born into. So that's really what drives me, is just really trying to have compassion for people. And I have seen so many wonderful success stories of people who have, you know, really turned their lives around, who have who are not, you know, not living in poverty anymore, not living in homelessness anymore. So that's always awesome. And on the flip side of that, there are going to be some, especially we deal with a ton of addiction. There are going to be some that don't make it. And the success stories and being able to be there for the family, even after that, when those types of things happen, are what keeps us going. So that's really my personal story. And so it's been 16 years since that, which now I'm telling my age, but 16 years that I've been working in this type of outreach ministry.
Thanks for sharing that, Rebecca. I really early in my career started working in the nonprofit sector. I was working at Berea College, which is where I studied. And then my husband and I moved with our family to Cincinnati. I'm not a native of Cincinnati. I'm actually a native of Western Pennsylvania. And I was working in museums and arts organizations when we moved here. And, you know, we do a lot of exploring. My husband and my children and I, we spend a lot of time in other communities and parks, and, you know, follow the news and travel a good bit. And, you know, I'm working in arts organizations and I'm loving my work, but I'm seeing the disparity in this city, and really feeling more and more like, you know, my skills, my interests, my resources are, you know, could be used in a more powerful way, a more meaningful way. And so I decided to make the shift, actually, you know, mid-career, and actually did a year of AmeriCorps service at Community Matters, which was a little unusual, you know, to give up, you know, your full-time job to decide to do a year of service at that point. But I never left because what I found, I actually grew up in a small rural community that had pretty concentrated poverty. I grew up in poverty. I grew up with a family member who had a substance abuse disorder. So I saw a lot of the issues firsthand that our neighbors in Lower Price Hill see every day. And so I found, here, 1,500, I say, cousins, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, like I found family in this community. And I found a way to take, my own childhood experience, but then also, being the first in my family to graduate college and to kind of get out of that situation and to live a different experience for my family now. I found a way to bring those worlds together, to support others in that journey. So I'll probably be here forever unless they choose to kick me out. But yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for sharing. I feel like hearing the journeys that people have had to this work is really helpful. I hope for the students who are watching and listening, because there are just so many ways to enter into this work, and so many different ways that your experiences can kind of lift you into these passions or these things that you want to do. And so thank you both for sharing that. I really appreciate it. The last question I have is really what, in your experience, if the students who are listening and watching, if they feel compelled or burdened by poverty, if their hearts are touched by this work, they're looking around them and they feel burdened and sad by the poverty that's around them, and they want to do something about it, how would you encourage them to get engaged in this kind of work and start making a difference?
I think that the biggest thing is to start as open as possible. So, go explore organizations that are doing the work, learn more, ask questions, meet people who have that lived experience of poverty as much as you can, so that you don't make assumptions about what help looks like, so that you're really listening to what others who are living it every day, say is going to be most helpful, most effective, and then just being really open, to helping to meet that need.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think, looking back at my life, I wish that at some point I would have just gone somewhere different. I remember being in that situation in that inner city environment, and one of my friends that was down there saying, for Christmas Eve, do you want to go down under the bridge? And I went down with a group that had been there many times before and had developed relationships to a tent community of homeless people that lived under one of the bridges in downtown Cincinnati, and was completely shocked that I had driven over that bridge, my whole life and had no idea that there was a community that lived under there. And so I think just being willing to open your eyes to what the experience of others is, and not feeling that, trust me, whatever your experience is, it's not the normal average one for everyone. Everyone has different experience. And I would say the biggest thing is finding a way that you're comfortable to engage, and let your area of comfort grow. Because maybe your area of comfort is just to come and say, hey, I'm willing to come and clean and clean your outreach center. I'm willing to and get to involved even with leadership there. And as you do that, maybe your area of comfort will grow. But I agree with Patty so much. Like, talk to people who are experiencing that and get to know them. And maybe you're not there yet, because I was so shy and I wasn't there at first. I couldn't get out of the kitchen, but going into the kitchen in the first place was what helped me develop that level of comfort where I could eventually move out of that and move into just a more effective role of being able to help people in that situation. And if as students, as you as you get older and you go into careers, you know, remember your community. That's my thing. Some of you will be business owners. Remember your community and invest in it, and invest in people in your community through your time and also through your resources. And I think that's really important to having a blessed and well-rounded life, is to invest in others. And so don't forget that as you get older.
Absolutely. Well, Rebecca, Patty, thank you so much for sharing and speaking today. Students who are watching, I hope this was helpful to you and that you learned a lot. I, encourage you to look into both Dream Center Cincinnati and Community Matters as you're, doing your searches, and all the other wonderful organizations who are doing this kind of work and lifting up people in the community. So thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.